you are going to be punished for your sins. And we talked about the different words that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses for the Day of Judgment. What are some of the terms that we saw in the surah for the Day of Judgment? Do you guys remember? Yawm al-Talaq, so the day of meeting. Why is it called the day of meeting?
Because everyone is going to be gathered on a playing field.
Yeah, everyone, all of creation is going to meet each other, but what other kinds of meetings are there going to be on that day?
The meetings of creations with their creator.
With their creator, and
With their good deeds and bad deeds.
yeah, and the doers of deeds with
Are going to meet
said
with their
deeds.
family member. Oh,
Yeah, and with their deeds. And that's actually a really good catch. The angels make dua, Ya Allah, the believers join them with their loved ones in paradise. So we talked about how, they ask for Allah to give the believers Jannatu Adn, like the gardens of Eden, which are among the higher ranks of Jannah. And he says, they say, join them with their loved ones. So if if your family is really pious and inshallah they make it to the gardens of Eden, but you weren't really like inshallah you made it to Jannah, alhamdulillah, but you weren't that level, the angels make dua like, Ya Allah, like lift them all so they can be together in the gardens of Eden. So I'm glad that you remembered that. We talked about how the scope of Allah's knowledge, right? He talks about, the reality of life and death and the Day of Judgment. And then he also says that he knows even the slightest movement of the eyes and everything that the chest conceal. So we also explore the scope of Allah's knowledge and power previously in the surah. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks rhetorical questions like, have they not traveled through the land and seen the ruins of those before them? We'll actually get back to this in today's page. And then we started the story of Musa alayhi salam, where Musa alayhi salam came to Egypt, and first he was preaching the signs of Allah, and Fir'aun, Haman, and Qarun, they all called him a liar, they all called him, a sorcerer. And then when he came to them with the truth, and we talked about this last week, the different phases, the different waves of genocide that the Egyptians carried out against the believers, Bani Israel, where as a response to being faced with the truth, Fir'aun ordered the murder of the baby boys of Bani Israel, right? And he continuously fed the system of trauma and brokenness for Bani Israel, right? And this is a tool, and we will get back to this in today's page. Fir'aun is a case study for all of time. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala why is Musa's story so often told in the Quran? Why do we read Fir'aun's words so much? Because the Quran is guidance for the rest of time, for all of humanity. There is a reason that Fir'aun does the things he does and says the things he says, because these things can keep occurring over and over again throughout the entire history of humanity, right? And these are things that we continue to see to this day. Anyway, so then we explored the scene where Fir'aun is with his most trusted generals, right? And he's having this private meeting. This is at the point, I'll remind you guys and myself of what specific point of Egypt's history we are at right now. Right now, this is after all of these things have happened, after all of the multiple waves of massacring the baby boys. This is after the sorcerers, they went down in sujood, they accepted Islam, they were executed. This is so Fir'aun's power is now slipping from his grasp. And in this meeting, this believing man who hid his faith spoke up. And over the past, I believe, 2 weeks, we started to explore his dialogue with Fir'aun and with his people. This believing man, as we know, it was a family member of Fir'aun. Classical scholars say that he was like a paternal cousin of Fir'aun. And we see the way that he approaches the da'wah, right? Because this was essentially da'wah. The way that he spoke up and the way that he structured his da'wah was something that we can really take away and learn from. What did he do? If you guys remember, he first applied to logic. If he is lying, then that's only against him. But if he is truthful, then you're going to be suffering some of what he has promised you or threatened you would happen from Allah. Then he shifts to us, what are we going to do if Allah's punishment comes to us? So he's like having a shared identity with the people he's talking to. Then he brings historical evidence from past nations, the nations of Nuh, Thamud. He's telling them like, guys, wake up. This is a pattern. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a certain way of dealing with disbelieving nations. Have you not seen that? And then he applies to their emotional and spiritual urgency. He talks about Yawm al-Tanad, the day of crying out. This is the day when, as we talked last week, there would be multiple dialogues on the Day of Judgment. The people of Jannah will call out to the people of Hellfire and say, we found that Allah's promise that He made to us was true. Have you found that Allah's promise to you was true? And they will say yes. This will be a day of very profound dialogue. And it will also be the day, Yawm al-Tanad. At-Tanad refers to the day of desperately and frantically crying out to each other. So I gave you guys, we talked about two terms for the Day of Judgment so far, Yawm al-Tanad and Yawm al-Talaq, that Fahad pointed out. What are the other two? Huh?
I didn't put anything.
Was it? Okay, that was Azim. What are the other two terms for the Day of Judgment that we talked about in this surah? Yawm al-Hisab. And then there's one more. It refers to the day that is rapidly approaching.
It's not Azifah.
Yawm al-Azifah.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Azifa?
Al-Azifah, yeah. So this surah, there's like a beautiful quality to it that we get so many of these different words for the Day of Judgment. So we've already explored 4 terms for the Day of Judgment. So anyways, this believer, we continue his speech, right? We left off last week that he was saying يا قوم إني أخاف عليكم يوم التناد. We just talked about that. يوم تولون مدبرين ما لكم من الله من عاصم. The day you will turn back trying to run away with no protector from Allah. وَمَن يُضْلِلِ اللَّهُ فَمَا لَهُ مِنْ هَادٍ. And whoever Allah allows to be misguided will have no one to guide him at all. Alright, so today inshallah we continue his speech. He says, وَلَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ يُوسُفُ مِنْ قَبْلِ بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ فَمَا زِلْتُمْ فِي شَكٍّ مِمَّا جَاءَكُمْ بِهِ. And in fact, Yusuf already came to you before with clear proofs, yet you never stopped doubting what he came to you with. What does this tell us about Yusuf? First of all, what was Yusuf's position in Egypt?
He was like the finance minister.
Yeah, so Yusuf alayhi salam, he rose to a point of governmental authority. He was the financial minister. But what is this telling us? Yusuf came to you from before with the clear proofs. So, was he just a financial minister? Like, did he just have right? Like, he also preached Islam. He also preached Islam in his position, not
In
only
Egypt, right?
in Egypt. Yeah. However, what does this tell us? That he's reminding them, like, Yusuf came to you from before and with clear proofs, yet you never stopped doubting what he came to you with. They accepted his governmental authority. They were like, you know what? You're going to keep us from starving. Like, we will follow you from a governmental sense, you know, like you are our minister. But whatever you're saying about Islam and Allah, like, they just remained in continuous doubt about that. So this actually tells us a little bit more about what happened after Yusuf, like the story of Yusuf, right? Like, he came to them with Islam, he continued to preach Islam, and they remained in doubt. حتى إذا هلك قلتم لن يبعث الله من بعده رسولا. Until when Yusuf died, you said, Allah will never send another messenger after him. Why do you think they said this? Why do you think when Yusuf finally died, and I use that word intentionally,
Died.
Finally.
when he finally died, they said, Allah will never send a messenger after him. And these are the people that doubted him, like continuously doubted him.
I mean, if I had to make a guess, I would say Yusuf alayhi salam lived for quite a while after that, after his story ends in the Quran, and because they continued to disobey or not follow what he's preaching to them, they said, okay, you know what I mean? What else is good?
To corrupt his
What else is
message.
good?
Yeah, they actually were hoping that this would be true. When they said, like, Allah will never send a prophet after him, they actually said that hopefully, like, hoping that that would be the case. And this is actually exactly how Ibn Kathir and others framed this. You know, a dead prophet can't call you to truth anymore and hold you accountable anymore. So when Yusuf alayhi salam finally died, they were like, all right, like, we're off the hook now. And Allah will never send another messenger after him, hoping that they will never have to have someone that is constantly kind of reminding them of the truth and trying to get them to accept Islam, right? And this is actually, if you think about it, an insult to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He does not neglect His creation without giving them guidance and sending His messengers to them. So their claim that, you know what, like, Allah is not going to send a messenger after him is even like a insult to Allah's rahmah, you know, and Allah's guidance. They're hopefully saying that He's never going to send a messenger after him. And why is it significant, the connection between Yusuf and Musa alayhi salam? Like, what connections can we draw from them two?
They're both closely those in power. Both
Yes, but
prophets.
how are their stories connected?
No, Egypt.
Egypt. What about it?
Basically, the story of Musa begins with the story of Yusuf.
Why?
He initially was the one who caused the migration of people of Banu Israel to Egypt.
Yeah. Yusuf alayhi salam was the reason that, of course, through the the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He was able to save them from famine, from drought and starvation, and all of the, through the interpretation of the king's dream, the 7 cows that are healthy and the 7 cows that are, sickly. And then all of the neighboring Arabian, all the neighboring regional peoples now depended on Egypt, and so that's why they started migrating into Egypt. And that's why Bani Israel was in Egypt at the time of Musa alayhi salam. But years had passed, and somewhere along the line, Bani Israel became a slave nation that was subdued by the Egyptians, right? So Yusuf alayhi salam was the reason that Egypt rose to its power, and Musa alayhi salam was the reason that Egypt Like he was,
No.
yeah.
He overthrew
Like
the-
Musa alayhi salam's story was the fall of Egypt. What other parallels are there between Musa and Yusuf alayhi salam when they came to the people that took care of them? When Musa alayhi salam as a baby came to
They're both
you
floating in
know,
the water.
I mean,
Yeah.
they both had to be sent away from their families, like their actual families.
Oh, they were both basically ended up in a royal family.
yeah
Is that what you're saying?
yeah they were outsiders that rose to power in a foreign nation, and they actually gained like political influence in a lot of regard. But let's just think about for a second, because the Quran like definitely draws our attention to the parallels between Yusuf and Musa. But just like think about how when Yusuf alayhi salam, actually let's start with Musa. When Musa alayhi salam was found in the river by the wife of Fir'aun, what did she say to Fir'aun? When she presented the baby to Fir'aun, what did she say? Yeah, she said maybe he can be beneficial to us, or we can take him as a son, right?
That's what the wife.
What did the wife of the minister of Egypt at the time say when Yusuf came to them and she went to her husband, the minister of Egypt? What did she say about Yusuf alayhi salam, like as a boy?
He's beautiful. We must keep him.
He was beautiful. But she said the same thing. She said maybe he will be beneficial to us, or we can take him as a son.
SubhanAllah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Is that the Aziz's wife?
Yeah.
She said that?
Is this the
Before?
same?
Go ahead, bro.
Was this the same woman that attempted to sleep with
That was
Yusuf
my
alayhi
question.
salam?
I believe so, yeah.
Probably. I don't know.
Okay. So I guess they didn't take it.
Because it's years later, right?
I mean,
She's planning.
That is
you said?
crazy.
I
I've
said I
never
guess they
thought
didn't
about
take
that.
him as a son.
Ah.
yeah,
Taking my
the,
son is beneficial.
the Quran like definitely draws parallels between Yusuf and Musa alayhi salam, but then there's also like much quieter parallels that you have to kind of discover
Yeah.
through the Quran, that like, wait, they said the same thing about these two. Like, so there's like, the Quran is full of gems of
Yeah.
like, you know, realizing how much these two men were actually connected and their legacies were connected. Anyway, so حتى إذا هلك قلتم لن يبعث الله من بعده رسولا كذلك يضل الله من هو مسرف مرتاب. This is how Allah leaves astray whoever transgresses limits and continues to doubt. And then he continues, the next ayah, الذين يجادل في آيات الله بغير سلطان أتاهم. Those who argue about the signs of Allah with no proof given to them. كبر مقتا عند الله وعند الذين آمنوا. How hateful and disgusting that is before Allah and before the believers. Where did we hear this word before?
Yujadiluna?
No, the ينادون لمقت الله أكبر من مقتكم. Does that sound familiar? We read that in ayah 10 actually. So this same word came back, maqt, which means like this feeling of intense like loathing and disgust and hatred. So back then the ayah was talking about those who disbelieved will be called to and told the disgust and disappointment that Allah has towards you is far greater than the disgust and disappointment you have with yourselves and with each other when they finally see the punishment. Here Allah is saying how hateful and disgusting that is before Allah and before the disbelievers. So this action of arguing about the signs of Allah with no proof given to you, how hateful and disgusting that is before Allah. And like it's enough for it to be hateful and disgusting towards in front of Allah. But he also says, and for the believers. Why? Because us as believers, like for you to be a true believer, you love what Allah loves and you hate what Allah hates, right? So this is kind of drawing a parallel between the way that Allah regards things and the way that believers share the same mindset towards the same things that Allah does. Does that make sense? You had a question?
Yeah, so it says that for those who argue about the signs of Allah without proof, can you elaborate on that a little bit? What is it referring to?
Yeah, so when we've actually talked about this in previous surahs too, like this concept comes up a lot, like yujadiluna bighayri sultan, like Muslims and especially the messengers, they come with clear logic and clear proofs from Allah, right? What do the opposition always respond with? They argue back against the proofs of Allah without any clear proofs of their own. That's what that means. It's like, I'm coming to you with a clear and completely like airtight argument or evidences from Allah, and they argue back out of pride and out of ego, trying to like find faults in the arguments and trying to distract from the arguments. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying like how hateful that is. And then كذلك يطبع الله على كل قلب متكبر جبار. This is how Allah seals the heart of every arrogant tyrant. يطبع means to seal or to stamp or to imprint. Alaikum salam. Now, Fir'aun speaks up again. وقال فرعون يا هامان ابن لي صرحا لعلي أبلغ الأسباب. And Pharaoh said, this was his, his genius response. And Pharaoh said, Haman, build for me a tower so that I may reach the pathways. Pharaoh is asking Haman, his advisor, right, to build him a tower. During this time of like power slipping from his hands, he asks Haman to build him a tower. What is Pharaoh doing here? Like why
Establish his power?
like this guy, this believing man is over here like preaching the truth and saying like I'm calling you towards the path of righteousness, and instead of responding to that, Pharaoh says, build for me a tower. What is he doing there?
Retreating from the argument in a way that I guess shows that if he wants, he can have something built so that he can go up there and talk to Allah. I'm gonna go talk to him myself.
Yeah, he's trying to distract from the message that he is being faced with.
Like he's desperate at this
Yes.
point, probably. Like he just wants. People are attracted to power. Unless people are just attracted to power naturally.
Yeah.
So if they see like this guy's got power where he could build like some sort of a structure that can go up to the sky, naturally they're going to be deceived, like just natural human inclination. So he's desperate for a solution. Like
This is theater. Like, this is spectacle. Pharaoh is like, you know what? I'm going to reassert my power. Look at what I can do.
Army parade,
Like,
basically.
might makes right, or whatever the phrase
That's
is.
the phrase.
Yeah. So this power that and his grasp on his people, which is slowly being chipped away, he's like, you know what? This power that's being chipped away and is at risk of collapsing at this point. Like, we are at the point of the story where Pharaoh's power is actually about to collapse. So he's trying to reassert his power. Remember how we said that Pharaoh was a case study for political manipulation until the end of time? This tactic has been used extensively in history. Like, Pharaoh did this thousands of years ago, and since then and until the end of time, dictators and rulers will always employ this strategy because it works. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Why did he memorialize this in his words that will exist forever? Is because this will always be guidance that will apply. So rulers have always been able to rely on the distractibility of the masses. Here's some examples. In Roman history, the Colosseum was built. It was criticized as they would use bread in circuses, is what the term was for. Roman emperors used to host these gladiator battles. So at a time when people, there was economic instability, people were starving, they hosted these gladiator battles. They were like, come, free food, free entertainment, and instead of using that money for structural reform, they actually spent that money to distract the people. So this was all done to win the favor of the masses. So this was like a tool. The gladiator battles were actually a tool to distract people from the political and economic instability of Rome at the time. Some other examples, during the Cold War, the space race, right? Like, you have two nations with nuclear weapons pointed at each other, and instead of to basically divert attention from that, oh, we're going to participate in a scientific race against each other to put a man on the moon, and we're going to Russia's going to release Sputnik into the into space. This is always a tactic that's used to distract from what is really happening. One more example that's a little bit more recent, with all of the
Case.
allegations and files that Trump is trying to distract from, the Epstein associations. Suddenly, Trump wants to build a ballroom in the White House and wants to make expansions and look at our patriotic endeavors. This is a very simple yet effective tactic. Rulers will always use these kinds of things to distract from what's really happening because it works. So anyways, لعلي أبلغ الأسباب, so that I may reach the pathways. أسباب السماوات فأطلع إلى إله موسى وإني لأظنه كاذبا. The pathways to the skies, so that I can look upon the God of Musa, even though I certainly think he's a liar. Where did Musa first talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
When he was either when he was on the mountain or when he was on the
Musa alayhi salam climbed the mountain to talk to Allah. Pharaoh is basically mocking this and saying, you know what? If the God of Musa is up there, I'll go up there myself. Build me a tower. I'll go up there and I will also talk to God. I will also look upon the God of Musa. Do you think Pharaoh actually thought that he would be able to reach the skies with a tower? Pharaoh is not stupid. We have seen that. He knows that this is not, but he's this comes from his arrogance and his mockery of the message. He's saying, you know what? If Musa can just go up the mountain and communicate with Allah, I'm gonna go and look upon him myself. So he was trying to engineer what can only be received from Allah. But Pharaoh also has to make sure that this doesn't look like he has any doubt. Oh, I'm gonna go look upon the God of Musa. So he reasserts, just to be clear, I definitely think this is all made up. I'm gonna go and check for myself, but just so that you guys don't think that I'm doubting, I do think that Musa is lying. وَكَذَلِكَ زُيِّنَ لِفِرْعَوْنَ سُوءُ عَمَلِهِ وَصُدَّ عَنِ السَّبِيلِ. And this is how the evil of Pharaoh's actions was beautified to him, and he was obstructed from the right path. His own choices led to his blindness. He wasn't just refusing guidance, he had come incapable of seeing it at all. Notice the literary shift here though. The passive voice is used. زُيِّنَ لِفِرْعَوْنَ سُوءُ عَمَلِهِ. Pharaoh's actions were beautified for him. Why is there like a passive voice here? Like, who were they beautified for him by?
Or Shaitan.
Now we get a glimpse of who's behind this all. Shaitan's tactic is to beautify for people the worst evils and transgressions to the point where they actually start to feel good about what they're doing. This is what happens when you continuously and adamantly reject Allah and embrace Shaitan's whispers. So this was actually like Zuyyina. This is the passive voice tells us that someone else is really behind all this, and we know that that's Shaitan. So Pharaoh is like doing all of this, but who is beautifying for him all of these evil actions is Shaitan. Like Shaitan is the like evil incarnate basically. وَمَا كَيْدُ فِرْعَوْنَ إِلَّا فِي تَبَابٍ. And the plotting and scheming of Pharaoh was nothing except that it led to total ruin. Tabab means complete loss and total destruction. So whoever chooses to be an enemy of Allah and mock His signs and guidance is always doomed to fail. Like, you pick a fight with Allah, like, what do you think is going to happen? Now, the believing man speaks up again. He doubles down and he steps forward with a very courageous statement. This is his final push. We're actually going to, over the next few ayat, which will extend into the next page for next week, inshallah, and or actually the end of his extensive speech in the Quran. Like, we've heard him speak, and then there's commentary, Pharaoh says something, he speaks again. Now we're in the final stretch of his da'wah and his speech, and there is a very tangible shift in the way that he makes his final push. He steps forward one last time and he continues. وَقَالَ الَّذِي آمَنَ يَا قَوْمِ اتَّبِعُونِ أَهْدِكُمْ سَبِيلَ الرَّشَادِ. And the believing man said, my people, follow me. I will guide you on the path of righteousness and right conduct. Where did we hear أَهْدِكُمْ سَبِيلَ الرَّشَادِ already? Previously in the surah. Who said that? Who said, I will guide you to the path of righteousness? أَهْدِكُمْ سَبِيلَ الرَّشَادِ. Yusuf? Fir'aun said that. Fir'aun told his people, follow me, I will guide you on the path of righteousness. This guy, the believing man, he steps forward and he says, follow me, I will guide you to the path of righteousness.
And that man who just said that, he's the paternal cousin of Pharaoh?
Yeah. So what very critical shift happened in this man's approach? Quick recap. He started with applying to logic, and then shared identity, and then historical evidence, and then emotional urgency. What just happened right now when he says, follow me, I will guide you to the path of righteousness? He's in the top cabinet meeting of Fir'aun. What is he doing here?
He's mirroring Pharaoh.
He's mirroring Fir'aun, but what else is he doing? Now he's in direct opposition of Fir'aun. This is the first time where he's like, follow me. Fir'aun is the king.
That's his claim to. He's
Yes.
running. He's running for.
He's like, all right, now I'm in direct opposition of Pharaoh's authority. Before he was just calling them to the truth and to Allah. Now he's like, reject Pharaoh, follow me. This is extremely brave. This is the culmination of his message. This is he set it up all this time, and now he makes his final push, and he's like, follow me. He sowed the seeds of convincing them in his previous points. Now he's like, I'm gonna deliver the final blow. Follow me, I will guide you on the path of righteousness and right conduct. This also shows us that one believer, just one believer, armed with the truth, can stand up to the most powerful tyrant and all of his armies. يا قوم إنما هذه الحياة الدنيا متاع وإن الآخرة هي دار القرار. My people, this worldly life is nothing but a temporary enjoyment, and indeed the hereafter is truly the home of permanent settlement. Now the believing man implores his people to stop fearing for their worldly lives. He's saying, guys, this is all temporary anyways. Don't be afraid of what's going to happen. He is giving them purpose. He's giving them perspective. Like, what is the thing that most stops people from believing in Islam or believing in the truth? It's because they're worried about what that's going to do to their worldly life, right? He's telling them, like, listen, yes, the sorcerers were executed for accepting Islam and standing up to Pharaoh. But this life is going to end anyways. This life is just a temporary enjoyment. These things that we, that we're given, they're just utilities for us in this short amount of time. And he's saying that the hereafter, the akhirah, is the home of permanent settlement. من عمل سيئة فلا يجزى إلا مثلها ومن عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن فأولئك يدخلون الجنة يرزقون فيها بغير حساب. And then he gives them Allah's perfect justice. He tells them, like, listen, your purpose is not within this world. Your purpose is in the hereafter. And then he gives them the formula for Allah's perfect justice. He says, whoever does an evil deed will only be repaid with its equivalent. And whoever does a good deed, whether male or female, and is a believer, they will enter paradise, where they will be provided for without limit. And here, whether male or female, is an explicit affirmation that gender carries no bearing on the reward for righteous deeds and faith in Allah. And as we know in other places of the Quran, every righteous deed is actually multiplied by 10, and every bad deed is only multiplied by 1. So this believer is saying, it's not just doing good deeds, you also have to be a believer. Like that, he gave that very important qualifier there. Like, just because you are doing good deeds doesn't mean that you will achieve the paradise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises. You have to do the good deeds, and you have to believe, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will enter you into paradise, where they will be provided for without limit. بغير حساب. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, like, after he admits you into paradise, at that point the hisab is over. Like, what you did is now history. And now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in paradise will provide for you for eternity without, like, measuring how much he's giving you anymore. Like it's not a calculated thing anymore. Now in Jannah, like, there's not going to be any limits to what Allah gives you. So let's recap one more time the believing man's da'wah strategy: logic, shared identity, historical evidence, emotional urgency. And then this page shows us his final call to action. Like, why did I set all this up? Is because now I am calling you to this call to action. Follow me, I will guide you to the right path. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a very simple formula that is his perfect justice. This life is nothing but temporary. The hereafter is the permanent settlement. And what is there that's waiting for you there? And how do you get there? This is the formula. Do good deeds, be a believer, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will enter you into that permanent abode. So on this page, these are my closing comments. We watch two responses to the same crossroads when faced with the truth. Fir'aun, who is cornered now, and he's losing his grip, reached for spectacle. Alright, I'm going to build a tower to the sky, built by human hands, and chase a god that he could physically put his eyes on. The believing man in the same room is countering that, and he reached for truth. He pointed his people upward. He pointed his people towards something eternal that cannot be seen with the eye, but with the heart. So Pharaoh is trying to build up. This believing man is telling people, look up, look at your final purpose. Your final purpose is towards Allah. Your final purpose and your final destination is the hereafter. But which line in this page, so going back to like a takeaway for us to take away from this page, which line in this page is especially frightening for us to take away as a serious warning? Pharaoh reached a point where wrong felt right to him. زُيِّنَ لِفِرْعَوْنَ سُوءُ عَمَلِهِ. Shaitan is always quietly in the background. For as long as we are alive, he is always suggesting us to take the path of self-destruction. That is what he wants for humanity. Like, we know that in other places of the Quran, Shaitan wants us to debase ourselves. Shaitan is jealous of the status that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. He's jealous. He tries to reduce us to just the clay that we are made of, you know, like you created him from clay, you created me from fire. He's always trying to reduce us to just our base desires and our base, like composition, right? And when we say yes to Shaitan enough times, eventually our sins will stop looking like sins to us. The fitrah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put inside of us, that was actually our pre-programmed alarm system. So when you do something wrong and you feel that regret, say Alhamdulillah. That is actually a blessing from Allah. That is your fitrah telling you something is wrong right now. Like you need to make a change. Once you lose that alarm system, that is absolutely frightening. Like that is when it becomes a very slippery slope. And we see Fir'aun at the bottom of that slope. He is at the point now where his worst deeds are made beautiful to him. He actually thinks that, like, you know what? Like, I'm doing something good. So this, I think, is something that we can all kind of take away from today's lesson. The fitrah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put inside of us, make sure you keep polishing it and like lifting it up and having it transcend above the sins that we commit. Always return back to Allah. Like make istighfar, polish up that fitrah, you know, in Ayat al-Nur, you know, like the believer's chest and his heart is described as a glass with a lamp inside of it. Keep polishing that glass. Don't let the sins suffocate your fitrah so much that you lose the ability to realize that you're drowning. So inshallah, we will continue next week with the end of the believer's speech. And Jazakumullah khair.